You're listening to Alabama Tradition with Ryan Fowler and Martin Houston on Tide 100.9 in Tuscaloosa. Championships, 27 SEC titles, 131 first-team All-Americans, 70 postseason appearances, 39 postseason victories. This is Alabama football. And this is Alabama Tradition with Martin Houston and Ryan Fowler on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Tradition, the past, present, future of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Just me tonight. No Martin Houston. Martin's coaching his son at Northridge and having a chance to coach his senior season. A little focused on the running backs. We will not talk with Martin tonight. We're going to talk to William Barger coming up in just a couple of seconds. Alabama off to an amazing start. When you talk about the recruiting side, the month of July has been very, very good for the Alabama Crimson Tide. We're about 39 days away. We're going to talk about a lot of different things, and we welcome in William Barger, former offensive line at the University of Alabama. Hey, William, I hope all is well. Welcome into Alabama Tradition. I think we may have lost William there. See if we is he still there? All right, we'll get him up there in just a couple of seconds and have to try to find a way to work in William as we get into the conversation. So William Barger there, and he said he got dropped. He just sent me a text and said, I don't know exactly what happened. So William Barger going to come up in a couple of minutes. We'll get into the conversation around college football, 39 days away from Alabama Crimson Tide football. Who do we play? Who knows right now at this point? Practice beginning to get a little bit of buzz, beginning to get a little bit of conversation. We'll get into that, and we'll continue here. William Barger, former offensive lineman at the University of Alabama. Hey, William, I hope all is well. Welcome into Alabama Tradition.
Hey, Ryan, how are you, buddy?
Hey, very good, man. I feel like that we get closer to the month of August, even though so much uncertainty around this game. I feel like that we're going to get football back. Where is your barometer at in football?
Ryan, I think, when the NCAA made the decision to, let the players return to campus in June, I think you kind of saw the writing on the wall. I mean, is there, some uncertainty with some of the things that you've seen with, some NFL players?
All right, so we'll get William back here in just a couple of seconds. That seems to be a very frequent happening today. So we'll I don't know exactly what happened, but we'll get William back in here in just a couple of seconds. Hey, Tommy, try line 2 and 3. Line 1, for some reason, has done that all day today there. So we'll get our engineer, and I know he'll be on top of it as we look at the phone system. We've had a backup phone system, and obviously we may have to go to a third-string option before it's all said and done. Let's see if we can maybe just get a complete introduction with William Barger, former offensive lineman at the University of Alabama. So let's try it again. Don't know exactly what happened. William, first off, let me apologize. Don't know exactly what happened, but we're having to call a little bit audible there. But I just want to get your barometer on the game of college football, where we are.
I don't know where y'all.
Yeah,
y'all lost
I don't think we
Ryan,
heard. I don't think we heard very much of what you said. It dropped literally after that.
Gotcha. What I was saying was, I think you could kind of see the writing on the wall when the NCAA, allowed the players to come back to campus in June. Certainly, I think you might have to pause a little bit, with what you see going on in the NFL this week with, players opting out of, $1 million a year salary and taking a $350,000 stipend to skip the season. And you've seen the positive COVID test,
Let's take a break. We'll come back. We'll get into the conversation right here on Alabama Tradition, the past, present, and future of the Alabama Crimson Tide.
You are listening to Alabama Tradition with Martin Houston and Ryan Fowler. Your connection to Tuscaloosa and the University of Alabama athletics on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
So we had a little bit of a phone backup issues. I know it's a little on the embarrassing side. I feel like I'm fumbling inside the goal line. I guess maybe inside the 2 or 3 yard line. I feel like Sark called the play there. We're going to replay Sly Croom. Had a conversation with him earlier. If you missed it, it was a dynamic one. Sly Croom going into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. This is Coach Croom here as we have a chance to listen back to a legendary player at the University of Alabama. Coach Croom, for one, congratulations on the awesome honor to be inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. I hope you're having a great day, sir.
I am, Ryan. Thank you very much. And, of course, I'm excited to have a chance to be a part of the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame.
Sure, rightfully so. And you kind of got your start here in the wonderful city of Tuscaloosa. Tell us about your high school days as we'll go through kind of a timeline of your career. But you played, and I'm even getting messages from people that remember watching you play. And one guy even told me, he said, ask Coach Croom, I think he graduated high school early at a younger age. And maybe he's right or wrong, but he said he thought you graduated when you were 16 or 17 years old. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but it's always fun to talk about those days.
Yeah, I was. What happened, I actually started school early, so I was always ahead of myself in class because my mother taught the first grade, and she didn't have a babysitter, so she took me to school, I think, when I was 5 years old, and I was doing the homework like everybody else, so she enrolled me in school, and that's how I got started. So I think I turned 17 my freshman year in college. So, but I enjoyed playing at Tuscaloosa High School. It was a lot of fun. A lot of those guys, still remember a lot of them that I played with. But we weren't very good, but we did have fun.
Hey, no doubt. Well, you certainly got an impact. Coach, you still have a lot of family that live in the area here, correct?
Yes, I do. My mother's still there, my brother and his family, and got a lot of uncles and aunts on my mother's side still there. And not many of my family on my father's side is not there anymore, but most of my family ties are still there.
Coach, when you committed to the University of Alabama, what was the commitment like? Was it pretty much automatic that you would head to the University of Alabama?
Well, it was the only major scholarship that I got. I was talking with Southern Cal, but of course that was too far away. And for me, it was at that time. I wasn't interested in going that far away. It never got to the point where they actually made an offer. But I grew up, of course, always wanting to go to Alabama A&M. John Stallworth was playing up there, and I was my dad had played up there, and I was going to go to A&M. And then my senior year, Danny Ford had a lot to do with it. Danny played at Alabama and was coaching out there at Alabama, and he did his student teaching over at Tuscaloosa High, and I was in one of his classes, and he sort of took a liking to me, and I think believed that I could play at Alabama, and he recommended that they sign me. So when that offer came along, like I said, I wasn't interested in going too far away from home, so I took the opportunity, and it all worked out.
Coach, when you look at playing days at the University of Alabama, if you're sitting around and someone says, share the great story of Coach Paul Bear Bryant, and I know you had a chance to work out under him as assistant coach, but as a player, What's that memory that maybe stands above the rest?
Oh, it's hard to pick a single one, but for me, it was my personally, it was there were just so many times. I guess the one that really always stands out to me was my senior year. I was going into we were practicing. I think it was the last scrimmage before we got ready to play our opening game, and I was a senior, preseason All-America. And, was feeling pretty good about myself, So we go out to have that scrimmage on Saturday, which was traditional about noontime on the Saturday. That last scrimmage was always a long, tough scrimmage. So, we go out and we think we're going to offensively and we're going to go down, we're going to drive down and score a couple of times and think everything's going to be finished and, and that'd be it for us today. Well, Coach took all the offensive linemen out. He took, he took Ozzie Newsome out, those guys out of there, and I was still in there. At one point during the scrimmage, I'm the only starter still in the scrimmage. And so I finally figure out to myself, I said, okay, he's testing me today for some reason. So I just go ahead and just keep going, and I ended up, I think I had about 80 or 90 snaps. But toward the end of the scrimmage, all those guys came back in scrimmage. Coach looked at me and said, hey, I forgot about you. And I looked right back at him. I said, yeah, right, Coach. And then he let me go out. He just started laughing. But it was one of those situations where I knew at this point, after being there, I knew, okay, this is my day. I'm being tested. He's going to see if my attitude is right. And if I respond right to this thing, everything's going to be okay. If I don't, it's going to be a long year. So it all worked out. And I think that the way I responded that day, I think it really cemented our relationship with Coach. And as the year went on, he would often ask me what when he wanted to get a pulse of the team, he would ask me. So we had a real good relationship after that. But the thing he was a coach was like, you could never rest and feel like you made it with him. He was always going to test you.
Coach, you spent a lot of time, obviously, in coaching that stretches from your time as a GA here, your time as an inside linebacker coach under Coach Paul Bear Bryant, and also Coach Perkins. You stretched to the NFL. I mean, you're how many years did you spend in coaching? I guess I could really do the quickly math from 1976 and recently retired in 2016. But I'm curious how being around Coach Bryant prepared you to be a coach and your personality and the characteristics that you displayed on the coaching side of things.
Well, the first thing is you learn not to be sensitive. You have to have a thick skin. You develop that over playing for him, and definitely over coaching for him. You develop a thick skin. You can deal with adverse circumstances, and you learn to handle the adversity of it. And you have to have an intense work ethic. Even since I've been out of it, and have so much free time now, and it just really has dawned on me just how intense the work was coaching for Coach Bryant and then coaching throughout the NFL. Just the intensity of the work. Going 7 days a week, a lot of times 6 hours of sleep a night. That's a long night, and that's the first thing. The work ethic. Developing a thick skin, and the details of preparation. That's the other thing that I learned from him. You have to prepare for and anticipate every situation, and to succeed in anything, you got to be ahead of the curve, because if you wait till the last minute, it's too late.
Coach, when you look back at Coach Paul Bear Bryant, as you're saying thick skin, that you've got to be thick-skinned to work around Coach Bryant, we always heard the rumor, and I think Murray Legg is the one that told us this, that you've almost never been an assistant coach until you get fired from Coach Bryant. And I'm curious, did you ever get fired from Coach Bryant?
No, I didn't. I didn't ever. I didn't ever get fired, but he geeked me a couple of times.
Well, Murray's got a great story.
And most of the times when he gigs you, you can't repeat them in publicly.
Sure. It's a lot of fun to hear these wonderful stories about the University of Alabama. I'm curious if you look back at your assistant coaching days. We love to preserve legacies of players. We've had Cornelius on a couple of months ago. Had a visit with him. We also love to remember Derek Thomas. Can you share a memory about those two outstanding linebackers?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. First of all, I was shocked when Coach Bryant hired me as the outside linebacker coach, because I'd never played outside linebacker. It was a month before we started practice in 1977. I was a part-time coach, and basically my job was just basically wherever Dwight Stevens went, that's where I went. But about a month before we started practice, Coach Donahue called me into his office and asked me did I have my notebook ready. I said, what notebook? He said, nobody told you coaching the outside linebackers? I said, no, Coach Bryant never said a word to me that I was coaching. He told Coach Bryant, told Coach Donahue to tell me I was the outside linebacker coach. So Dude Hennessy gave me I went down and got with Coach Hennessy, who had been the outside backer coach, and he gave me about a 3-hour clinic, and it was the best coaching clinic I've ever been involved in my whole career. And I was very fortunate to have some great players when I was coaching outside backers. I had E.J. Jr. my first year, then Mike Pitts and Wayne Hamilton and Cornelius Bennett and Derek Thomas. I just had some great players, which for a 22-year-old guy who never played the position, thank God I had those talented guys, and I just tried to get out of their way and just let them play. But Cornelius was he was a great competitor, and he made all the other players around him better. But his vision was just absolutely incredible. I'll never forget, we were playing Georgia one year, and Cornelius was chasing a play from the backside, and he was running hard, boy, and he'd gotten all the way down behind the center. Going full speed, chasing the play away, and they ran a reverse. And when the ball was pitched, I said, it's going to be a touchdown. This guy, Cornelius, turns and chases the guy and tackles him for a 1-yard gain. And I'm sitting there thinking, a normal guy would never have even seen that ball pitched. And that's just one of the plays, just the way he could see things and reacted quick. And then Derek Thomas, the thing I always was impressed about Derek the first time I saw him was he had come up to visit us, and he was over there working out with the track team. And I saw this guy coming out of the block, and I said, "Who's that over there on the track team?" And he said, "Well, that's our new signee, Derek Thomas." They said, "I said, what position he's playing?" Because at the time I didn't know anything about this guy.
Sure.
Because he was recruited as a tight end. He was originally coming to Alabama as a tight end. When I saw him come out of those blocks, he was about a foot off the ground, and he was coming out of there faster than I was sprinters. I said, that guy ain't no tight end. I said, I'm getting this guy to play outside linebacker some kind of way. And eventually Coach Perkins decided to move him to outside backer. And of course, Derek became one of the greatest pass rushers in the history of the game. And I tell people all the time, I said, one guy said, well, when we taught Derek Thomas how to rush the passer, no. I said, nobody taught Derek Thomas how to rush the passer. God made Derek Thomas a pass rusher. He was born to rush the passer.
It's a lot of fun to be able to preserve that. I went out to Kansas City, it's probably been a couple of years ago, and I met up with his son, and I felt like I was sitting there looking identical at Derek Thomas. Derek Thomas was my favorite player at the University of Alabama, and grew up in the great state. And I was sitting right across, and we're sitting there having dinner, and I feel like I was having dinner with Derek Thomas because he looks identical to his father, and it's just fun to be able to preserve those legacies of the great players. Coach, when you look back at pass rushing now, it seems that's a hard position because you're sitting there describing that story of tight ends. Now it's almost a reverse side of things, right? Don't a lot of the guys that would be pass rushers go to that other position? Now they play the tight end position because of the involvement of the offensive side of the football.
Well, a lot of those guys are playing there, but still the pass rushers are still a premium, particularly in the NFL and even in college football. If a guy can catch, of course, if he has great hands, a lot of them like to play tight end. They like to get the ball. but the ones that like to tackle people and probably don't have great hands as receivers, and they still like to rush the passer down because that's a premium in the NFL now.
Hey, if I may, I'd like to move just to a final play, and then we'll circle back around and talk about you being inducted into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. We're talking with Coach Sly Crum here at the University of Alabama. Derrick Henry, obviously a proud alumnus of the University of Alabama. What he did in 2015, 395 carries, Heisman Trophy. But we've also seen that next level at the NFL. What did you see him coaching him there at Tennessee that maybe allowed him to be as successful as he's been in the National Football League?
First of all, Derrick is a physical phenomenon now. I have, seen some guys close. Some guys have that size, but the combination of size, speed, toughness, ability to catch, intelligence, it's rare. I mean, the guy is 245 pounds and probably less than 5% body fat. I mean, it's amazing, and he gets stronger as the game goes on. I mean, he's a guy who legitimately can carry the ball in the NFL. I mean, a 30-carry game would be nothing for Derrick. In fact, when this past season, when Arthur Smith was a good friend of mine as the offensive coordinator there, when he got the job, I think the first day he got the job, I called him and I said, hey, Art, 20 of those plays in the game plan on a minimum belong to Derrick. I said, if you do that, you'll win games. And he agreed with me, and he wisely gave Derrick the ball a lot last year, and that's why he had such a great season, because he needs touches, and the more touches he gets, the better he gets.
Coach, from a coaching perspective in this current pandemic, if you were trying to juggle all of this and you're trying to look at all this, how would you, and I know this is probably a 2-hour conversation, I'm just going to try to ask you to maybe tell me how would you approach this season when you're designing your offense, defense? I mean, would it change what you try to do, understanding that, the night before you may lose your starting quarterback, you may lose your starting running back, you may lose your backup guy. Would it change the way that you coach in this current pandemic?
Yeah, a lot of this is, like you say, it would be a 2-hour discussion if I had all the answers, which I don't.
Okay. No.
And even though I'm not coaching, I've been thinking about it, trying to figure out how exactly I would approach it. I would definitely be very simple starting out, because you got to have depth. I think this is going to be one of those years where even if let's say everything goes and when we get the season started, the teams that's got experienced quarterbacks are going to have an advantage. There's no question about that. I think they definitely got an advantage. Then the next thing, you've got to be fundamentally sound. The teams that, again, which is usually the case, but I think especially so now, is the teams that don't beat themselves with penalties, turnovers, and missed assignments, and play very good in the kicking game. Those are the teams that are going to get started out early, and I think will have the most success. I think the offense is going to have to be very simple and starting out, and they're going to have to play excellent defense. So if you keep guys off the board and don't beat yourself early offensively, and then you got a better chance to win.
Coach, it's a lot of fun to be able to visit with you and talk about your history here in Tuscaloosa, at Tuscaloosa High School, as a linebacker and a tight end, ended up at the University of Alabama, the All-American that you were able to turn in, and to be inducted in the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame virtually there. It's going to be able to watch that at ASHOF.org, and to be able to go in with Woody McCorvey. You were talking about E.J. Jr. I'm so happy E.J. Jr. got that call into the College Football Hall of Fame. So the 2020 year is going to be good for a lot of us in Tuscaloosa, and it's good to be sharing some memories about your playing days, your coaching days, and certainly proud of what you've been able to accomplish. It's a great historical career.
Well, thank you very much, and a lot of people in Tuscaloosa have had a lot to contribute a lot in making my career and my life a success. My high school teammates and a lot of family and friends around Tuscaloosa.
Coach, thank you for your time. I hope you have an awesome afternoon, and congratulations once again from all of us here in T-Town.
Well, thank you for having me.
America. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By honoring your sacred vocation of business, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. At Grand Canyon University, our MBA degree program is 100% online, with emphases in business analytics and finance to help you reach your goals. Find your purpose at GCU. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.
It's awesome. Having some fun. Have some fun, man. Talking Alabama Crimson Tide football on Alabama Tradition with Martin Houston and Ryan Fowler in Tuscaloosa on Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
Braden Gall, welcome back to T-Town. I hope you're having an awesome day.
Hey, man. How are you, bud? I'm
very
well.
good. Under 40 days, or at least we hope, right? Under 40. It's been a long off season here in T-Town, as you can imagine.
Yeah. I think it's been a long off season for all of humanity. There's no question about that. And no, listen, I am, like everything, I am optimistic and hopeful, and am rooting for all of these things that need to fall into place so we can get some football. But you got to also kind of prepare for the other side of that equation as well. And that's just my personal advice. Like, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. I think is generally a good life strategy.
Braden, when you look at the NFL players opting out of the upcoming season, do you think we'll see that on the college game at this rate that we're seeing now on the NFL, day that they report?
That's a great question, and you're talking about, I guess, Dante Hightower, one of the biggest names, right? To step out. I haven't seen, I haven't checked the news in the last couple of hours, but I saw that this morning, and that, it's certainly interesting. I know he's got a new child, right, that was born just a couple of weeks ago, and listen, this is a great example of why, in this really delicate time, that we just need to be more sort of aware of each other. And everybody has different levels of risk that they're comfortable with, right? Like, I've got buddies who, are taking the whole thing seriously, but just are very social. And the couples that want to, like, we've got friends that want to go out to dinner, and they're going to do it because I've got, other friends who never leave their house anyway and have no desire to leave their house. So
sure.
You have to let people deal with their own risk and their own levels of concern in their own way. And I just think that's lost right now. If you jump on Twitter with a take, or if you're, I just think what's lost is that it's okay that people feel differently about how much risk they do or don't want to have in their life. And there are certain things that we all need to do to try to help everybody be healthy. But, I don't think college football players are going to opt out as much as the NFL players will. Like, there's, when you've got a whole lot of money in the bank already, it's easy to say, no, I'm going to sit this one out, because I'm worried about my wife or my mother-in-law or my son or daughter or whatever. So I don't think the college kids have as much leeway, unless you're maybe, Trevor Lawrence, if you're like, let's take it to Alabama. If you're Najee Harris and you think you're going to be a big time prospect and a high draft pick or whatever, like, could you sit out, especially at the running back position where you save some of the tread on the tires anyway? Like, I could see it being a bowl game like situation, but again, just like with the bowl games, I know it's not necessarily popular, but I don't really care. You don't get to tell other people how they value and prioritize things in their lives. And if Christian McCaffrey wants to sit out of a bowl game because he thinks it's what's best for his family financially, I'm sorry, you don't really get to tell him what to do. He gets to make that decision, and that's the same thing for Dante Hightower and every other player in college or pro football. I don't think it will happen nearly as much in the college game unless we see some really horrendous sort of quote-unquote working conditions, right? Like if there's a coach who clearly doesn't care about, the safety of his kids, I could see, large numbers of people sort of quote-unquote protesting that and stepping away. But that would be a really rare and probably, severe extreme to think through.
Braden, when you look at Bob Bowlesby, and we're talking Athlon college football analyst, Athlon Sports that you can find on your favorite supermarket newsstand, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble. You can find it online at athlonsports.com. You can order the copy, and we're going to get into that coming up in a couple of seconds. But Bob Bowlesby, it seems like that they've added some games. Iowa State scheduling Ball State going non-conference. That kind of gives us a little bit of clue. But I think there might even be a deeper clue. The Big Ten kind of went rogue, right? Pac-12 followed those guys. It seems like this bond that's been created between the Big 12 and the ACC and the SEC, with Bob Bowlesby talking about the 12-game schedule, does that give us any clues of what the SEC will vote on Thursday to do 12 games, or maybe it's reduced? Does it give us any clues there, anything?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I think, like you said, we're going to know by the end of the week because they have to start making announcements, and that's when they promised that they would make announcements, both the ACC and the SEC. I think the Big 12 is just in sit, wait, and watch mode. They're going to do whatever the SEC and the ACC decide to do, in my opinion. Okay. I still think that almost everybody's going to have to come down to doing what the Big Ten did. I don't see how you can function otherwise because, again, cases are spiking everywhere. 1,000 people are dying a day. We're in the worst of the pandemic basically right now, especially in states down in our area of the country, and I'm in Tennessee. And so what has to happen is you have to limit risk and create control, right? Like try to make your own bubble. And what the Big Ten did is it limited its bubble to 14 teams. The SEC, if it decides to go just conference only, and maybe they have the one games with the ACC or whatever, let's say, what you do is you limit risk by controlling scheduling, controlling travel, controlling testing and tracing and protocols. You don't have to, match up the MAC. Like when you talk about Iowa State with Ball State, like what has to happen then is Ball State has to then follow the exact same protocols as Iowa State, and there's no way to know. Like how does everybody follow all the same rules? You're just trying to herd cats at that point. So that's why the Big Ten is trying this, is to give it their best chance. And I fully expect, I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I fully expect every league to be down. I think all 10 leagues will be down to conference-only schedules at some point. I just think it gives you the best chance to succeed, and that gives you control over all those variables that right now we just don't have a lot. Like, if you're traveling across the country to play a team in a different league that may have totally different protocols, that you're opening yourself up with more risk. And again, I think the last line of defense in all of this is going to be parents. Parents have not been vocal about this yet. If they start to see their kids being mishandled or mistreated or testing positive or not caring or whatever, I don't expect parents to stay quiet on this for very long. And hopefully that doesn't happen, but it's very possible.
You trust these athletic departments? Because there is
of course not.
There's an incentive for them not to test, right? Not test correctly, I guess would be the way to say.
Well, I don't know about that part. I think that they, behind closed doors, I think that they want all the information that they can gather, and they want to, again, because of liability, literally lawsuits about children's health. That's what we're talking about here, right? Like,
sure.
If you're a parent and you're sending your kid to go play football at Georgia or Tennessee or Alabama, you're talking about the universities opening themselves up to legal liability here if you don't handle it correctly. So I think behind closed doors you're handling it correctly. I think the flow of information is an all-out war right now. I think that's where the front lines of this battle are being fought. Unfortunately, which shouldn't be the case. That's sort of the echo chamber that we've been given by our government. But I think Greg Sankey refused to answer a very simple question, and he's really, really good. Like, he's generally very hard to pin down on anything. Very smart, very calculating, and has been leading the way on being careful with this. And HBL's like, hey, how many schools have tested positive? And he wouldn't even answer. There's a reason that Tennessee, when they did their first rounds of tests and every kid came back to campus, that they announced as loudly and as proudly as possible that nobody tested positive. Well, guess what happened when they had their next round of testing after the 4th of July? They didn't announce anything. They won't tell anybody. They won't tell anybody anything.
Brayden, we don't even have a positive test confirmed in Tuscaloosa. Like our communication staff, we haven't got one email.
Right.
None.
Right.
None.
And,
Zero.
And again, so now again, is anyone shocked by that? I mean, that's the way college football coaches handle everything.
Sure.
That's not really a surprise. But again, let's think about this through a PR lens and go, all right, if I was in charge of the SEC and I had a bunch of really good information to tell people, you think I would be hiding that and holding it back? No, I'd be screaming from the mountaintops that we are safe, we've got protocols in place, and that there are a bunch of negative tests. The only reason you wouldn't give that information out is that it's not good. Like, there's no other reason to hold that information back.
Brayden, we look at Alabama's roster and kind of going back here in Tuscaloosa because talent's going to take over this season. I think that's how it's going to determine, who's going to be the best team in college football. Let's go to Alabama. Who's the best player on Alabama's roster going into this year as we look at this team? Is it Najee Harris?
That's like an unfair question for like every other team in America to have to listen to the answer, right? Like I could rattle off 15 players before I'd get to somebody that like most other teams would be like, yep, that's our best player. So it's just sort of an unfair embarrassment of riches, with the exception of maybe Clemson and Ohio State, maybe LSU. There's a few teams that can. Georgia's starting to recruit basically at the same level as Alabama. So it's almost unfair. Listen, I have personal rooting interest involved in watching a particular player because of pure entertainment value. I don't necessarily think he's the best player on the team. I don't think he is, if I had to draft players, I might take a left tackle, let's say hypothetically, or a quarterback before I'd take this particular player because of value of position. But if you throw all of that out and just say, who's the guy you tune in to watch because you think he does what he does better than anyone else, maybe in America, and that is Jaylen Waddle. You let me watch him with the ball in his hands on any given play in any stadium in front of zero fans, and I am hook, line, and sinker watching, must-see television. Like, it's just, I think what he does it better than anybody else maybe in America, and there's some really, really good players that do what he does. I just think he's better than everybody else at his position in the country. So, there's a lot of great answers to that question. There's a lot of names that even we don't, the regular media, the regular fan in college football doesn't know enough about yet that will blossom into superstardom should we have a season. But if you ask me right now, who do I think, better than everybody else in America at what they do, it's Jaylen Waddle. That's the guy I'm tuning in to watch with the football in his hands every single Saturday. And
let me parlay that into this sports science facility. Dr. Ray is probably one of the best speed analysts in the entire world. I mean, and that's what he focuses on. That is his PhD. That's what he, designed to do. So there's a chance that Jaylen Waddle may be even faster because that seems to be the buzz coming out of the building, that everybody is shocked the way that Dr. Ray is taking the approach of getting, 0.2 of a 40-yard dash time or improving that. So that may be a scary combination for the rest of college football.
Yeah, it's not even fair. Like, if he's faster than he was last year, it's not even fair. Like, it's just not. Imagine him touching the ball 110 times this year. Like look at what Rondale Moore did for Purdue as a freshman, and you're looking at these guys, the Wendell Robinsons of the world at Nebraska. These guys that are just do everything, Swiss Army knife, that you just can't touch in the open field. And imagine what he could do with like 100, let's say 30, 35, 40 rushing attempts, a dozen, 2 dozen kick return, punt returns, and 70, 80 receptions. Think what he could do with 140 touches. It would be insanity.
It would be. It'd be a lot of fun. I mean, is there a chance that he could be a part of the Heisman conversation with enough touches?
No, for sure. And again, I think we live in a world where, that position is so critical with big play offenses and spreading the field and forcing defenses to change. Now, I think do I think Alabama's going to, is Najee Harris going to have fewer touches than Jaylen Waddle? Of course not. I think you run the football and you dominate and you crush people's souls the way I think Alabama's going to do this year. That's the focal point of your offense because that's how you're going to attack an elite level defensive line in a playoff game. But if you can get 6 to 8 touches a game to a guy that can completely flip a game on its head in a matter of seconds, that's the guy to do it. And there's plenty of them in America. I just think he's the best one.
I love the anonymous scouting reports. I use them quite often because I think it really gives us, it removes the coach talk. Nick Saban will stand up there on a Monday before Georgia State, and he'll say they got tremendous players, they got tremendous coaches, we have tremendous respect. I mean, I can substitute the team, and it's the same Monday press conference. And to me, the scouting, the anonymous reporting, kind of gives you a chance for coaches to talk openly about what they really think about the team. As you look at Alabama, they're not buying into this decline that Alabama kind of – now in Tuscaloosa, Alabama fans would buy 11-2 as a down year, but these coaches are not buying that Alabama was a down, sliding decline for this football team.
No, and I can remember going to media days now for, I don't know, almost 2 decades, that like every 4th year or something when Bama doesn't actually win a national championship, there's like you could just bank on the summer of dead dynasty talk, right?
Sure,
like it's just going to be the summer of this is the end of the dynasty. And every time I just shake my head and I'm like, is Nick Saban still in charge? Do they still have better players than 99.9% of the rest of the country? If the answer to those 2 questions is yes, then the dynasty isn't going anywhere. So I mean, like a down year is losing one of the most transcendent players in school history and still almost making the playoff. You know what I mean? Like
sure.
That's a down year for the program. So no, I think, listen, we picked him to play in the national championship game. We have him playing Clemson for the whole thing. I would stick by that today through pandemic or otherwise. So I don't, I obviously completely disagree with the idea that there's some downturn coming. If anything, we know Nick Saban's teams generally get better with off-year motivation after not accomplishing their goals the year before, and in particular this year because the coaching staff is almost exclusively intact. And so that's the first time in a while we're not going to have major upheaval on the coaching staff. So not only, yes, there's a quarterback change. I get it, but I'm still, if you give me Bryce Young and Mac Jones, there's not too many quarterback rooms in America I would trade for that. And so I think, it's just absurd. It's just ridiculous to read it's just a dumb question. Like, is the Alabama dynasty over? I'll ask that question when Nick Saban is no longer the head coach at Alabama.
You guys have got a lot of great featured stories, whether you're talking about the national edition or the SEC regional copy where you really go into the SEC preview. It says largest and most accurate SEC preview. Let me spend a couple seconds here with Tennessee. Are you buying this hype that's coming out of Knoxville? Because that's like an off-season tradition for the last 25 years, right? Tennessee.
Well, they've only been picked to win the East like once in 10 years. So I will push back on the narrative that there's hype. I think Tennessee fans have been begging and pleading for something relevant for basically since 2007, I guess. And so I think there's a hungry, thirsty fan base, and then there's like actual reality. Like nobody's picking Tennessee to win the East. Nobody has picked Tennessee to win the East outside of one time with Butch Jones in the last like 8 years, even at SEC Media Day. So there's really not like this every year Tennessee gets overhyped thing. I think that's actually kind of a misnomer. But there is a lot of excitement about the team because fans think that there was so much growth coming out of the end of the season last year that their offensive line has gone from one of the worst in the conference to probably one of the best in the conference. You've got a quarterback room that's got some established veteran talent and some young, explosive, interesting talent. You've got all the young players that Jeremy Pruitt's recruited have apparently been hits on the recruiting trail with the Eric Grays and Henry To'oTo'os and Wanye Morrises of the world. And so if he can continue to do that, then I think there's reason for optimism. I still think they're going to be a heavy underdog in 4 games, let's say, if they play every game, and will be favored to win the other 8. So I think 8-4 is where we've got them. I think that's fair. I think that's a season of growth and a step in the right direction. And, they're riding the second longest winning streak in college football. I get that. They've beaten one team in 2 years under Jeremy Pruitt in the SEC that had a winning SEC record. And that was Kentucky 2 years ago, the Kentucky team that won 10 games and almost went to Atlanta. They have not beaten another team in the SEC that finished with a winning record. So they still have to prove a lot before people start talking about them going to Atlanta.
behind you, hit your stride. Go teach the Bulldogs to behave. Send the Yellow Jackets to a watery grave. And if a man starts to weaken, that's a shame. For Bama's pluck and grit have writ her name in crimson flame. Fight on, fight on, fight on, men. Remember the Rose Bowl will win there.
Mostly cloudy. A few passing showers and thunderstorms are likely this afternoon and tonight. The high today 88, the low tonight 73. Tomorrow and Thursday, mostly cloudy. A good chance of showers and thunderstorms both days. Highs between 86 and 89. I'm James Spann on the ABC 3340 Weather Center on Tide 100.9.